Hello philosophers, welcome to week 6, where we continue studying Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. This week we will read his book 2, which covers topics like virtue, habituation, character, excellence, and how it relates to happiness. At the end of the week we will also write our second short paper. Week 6 will be a little easier than week 4 because you do not have 2 discussion board posts and there's a little less reading. This week we will discuss Aristotle's thoughts on virtue. We'll participate in just a single discussion board on virtue and write our second short paper, so that by the end of this week you'll be able to complete our 7th objective, which is that you'll be able to analyze Aristotle's account of virtue, including his thoughts on feelings and character. And then I have a second objective written that of course is not one that we will formally evaluate, but it is just that you'll be able to evaluate the philosophical question from weeks 4 to 6 of your choice in the writing of your second short paper. In order to achieve these 2 goals, you're going to study Aristotle's Ethics, Book 2. As you're doing that, you can of course study the written lecture on Aristotle and virtue that I've written for you, and I also have a couple of other resources you might find useful. And then as you're doing that, or when you're done with that, you'll answer the journal reading questions on Aristotle on virtue. By Wednesday you need to post in the discussion board called Aristotle on Virtue, and you need to do that no later than Wednesday, and then coming back Friday and at the latest Sunday over the weekend to make sure that you can learn from your classmates. Just like we did for short paper number 1, I anticipate that you will prepare your second short paper on Saturday, writing it out in standard form and then outlining your argument, making sure that your argument is reasonable, that it's valid and sound, and then probably spending your time Sunday actually producing the paper. Again, the paper is short, and it's reasonable that you could do this in 2 days. The resources you will need to complete these activities are in your lecture and resources folder. My written lecture is here, and then I've attached a video from a crash course series which I enjoy in other disciplines, less so in philosophy, but I've found this one to be useful in the past, and I think that you guys will probably as well. And then I've included something that I see a lot in public schools all over the country, and whenever I see it I always think of Aristotle's book 2. Additionally, the assignments this week are very typical. You have the journal reading questions. There are 7 this week. And then you have the discussion board, Aristotle on Virtue, which again you should begin by Wednesday. And then finally you have short paper number 2. Now you've all received feedback on your short paper number 1, so I imagine that you probably have a pretty clear idea of what I do when I score these papers, what my thought process is like, and what I think a good philosophy paper, how it's organized, and what it sounds like. So I imagine you'll do much better on this short paper number 2 than you did on the first. But just to remember, the one that you score the worst on, or the one that you want to think about more carefully, is what you can use as your final term paper, where you'll substantially revise and lengthen your short paper number 1. So you can or one of your 2 short papers. So you can certainly have that in mind as you work through short paper number 2 this weekend. The 4 philosophical questions that you can choose from. The first follows, finally we completed in weeks 3 and 4 rather, Plato's definition of justice, so you can finally consider that. You also, because of weeks 4 and 5 can carefully consider Plato's theory of the forms. Last week, week 5, you were introduced to Aristotle's idea of happiness. And then this week, you've been introduced to Aristotle's ideas on virtue and character. And I suspect that you'll probably be interested in that sufficiently and or have good enough knowledge to where you might feel comfortable taking that on as your paper. So I've included that as a possible option as well. Of course, if you have any questions, as is usual, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I will help you in any manner I can.